Good morning! Start na tayo, Ma'am Nak.
Ay, okay po. 8:30 na pala. Magandang umaga po sa inyong lahat, mga kasamahang guro. Ngayon ang ikalimang araw ng ating GE Conference at ang portion na ito ay tinatawag nating Baon-Bidahan o GE Conversations. Ito ang parallel sessions ng GE Conference 2021. Okay po ba yung audio ko? Naririnig po ba niyo ako?
Yes,
naman po.
okay siya.
Okay. Salamat po. Ako po si Kimuell-Gabriel mula sa Departamento ng Pilipino at Panitikan ng Pilipinas, Kolehiyo ng Arte at Literatura. At ako ang tagapagpadaloy ng sesyon sa umagang ito mula 8:30 hanggang 10 a.m. Kagaya ng alam nating lahat, may tatlong layunin ang GE Conference 2021. Ito ay una, kumustahin ang ating naging pagtuturo sa nakaraang 2 semestre sa ilalim ng krisis ng pandemya, no? To reflect the teaching of GE courses in time of crisis. Pangalawa, muling pag-usapan ang makabuluhan o relevance ng filosofiya ng general education. At pangatlo, tungo sa pagpapalakas pa ng pagtuturo at pagkatuto natin sa ilalim ng mga GE courses. Nagsimula po tayo noong April 26 to 27, May 5 to 6, at natapos nating pag-usapan at inuna natin ang 11 system GE courses. Devoted naman ang araw na ito sa iba pang GE courses na distinct sa mga unit. No? At yung ito ay kilalang ibinibigay ng unit na yon at o kaya ay inadapt o gustong i-adapt, no, ng iba pang CUs. And they used to be clustered under the AH, MST, and SSP domains, bagamat hindi na natin masyadong ginagamit ang clustering na ito. Bukas naman ang plenary session ng GE Conference at wag po kayong mawawala. So sa araw na ito, kagaya ng inyong nakikita, ang pag-uusapan natin ay ang mga kursong PS21, English 13, PANPIL 19, Speech 30, at Southeast Asia 30. Dahil marami po tayong tagapagsalita ngayong umaga, hahatiin ko sa 2 set ang pagpapakilala ng mga tagapagbahagi sa umagang ito at ire-request ko na pakibuksan ang video ng mga tagapagsalita habang kayo ay aking ipinapakilala. Ang unang set ng ating tagapagbahagi ngayong umaga ay sina Karlo, Michael ay Mongaya. Si Karlo ay nagtuturo ng Philippine Studies 21, Panitikan at Kultura. Wika, Panitikan at Kultura sa ilalim ng Batas Militar. Nagtuturo siya sa Departamento ng Pilipino at Panitikan ng Pilipinas, UP Diliman. Nagsilbi siya bilang head researcher sa paggunita ng ika-50 anibersaryo ng Diliman Commune na pinasmunuan ng UPD Office for Initiatives in Culture and the Arts. Ang kanyang mga akdang sanaysay ay nasa larangan ng araling pang-media, kultura at panitikang rehiyonal, batas militar sa Pilipinas at kasaysayan ng mga kilusang panlipunan. Kasapit siya ng Congress of Teachers and Educators for Nationalism and Democracy o CONTEND UP at contributor sa Global Voices, isang international at multilingual na komunidad ng mga manunulat, tagasalin at tagapagtaguyod ng karapatang pantao. Philippines Studies 21 is an adopted course in UP Cebu. At para ibahagi ang karanasan na ito sa kanilang unit, ito ay ibibigay sa atin ng pangalawang tagapagsalita, si Associate Professor Rose Arong. Rose Arong is an Associate Professor at the College of Communication, Art and Design in UP Cebu. She teaches the following GE courses: Arts 1, Com 10, and PS 21. She completed her PhD at the University of New South Wales, Sydney. She serves as the Creative Writing Program Coordinator and DYUP Supervisor in UP Cebu. Her articles have appeared in the Publishing Research Quarterly, Post-Colonial Studies, Journal of Graphic Novels and Comics, Critica Cultura, Ariel, and Text Matters. Her research interests include narratology, Philippine literature, Cebuano history and culture, and medical humanities. At ang pangatlong tagapagsalita sa unang set ay si Associate Professor Pauline Marie Hernando. Pauline Marie Hernando ay naglilingkod bilang Associate Professor sa Departamento ng Filipino at Panitikan ng Pilipinas, Kolehiyo ng Arte at Literatura, Universidad ng Pilipinas, Diliman. Siya ang autor ng aklat na Lorena, Isang Talambuhay, na nalathala noong 2018. Ang mga pangunahing kursong itinuturo niya sa DFPP ay ang produksyong pampanitikan ng kilusang kababaihan, panitikan ng kilusang anak pawis, kasaysayang pampanitikan, at Philippine Institutions 100. Nagsimula siyang magturo ng sexualidad, kasarian at panitikan o PANPIL 19 mula taong 2014. Kasalukuyan siyang naglilingkod bilang pangkalahatang kalihim ng All UP Academic Employees Union. So magsisimula na po tayo sa presentasyon ni Assistant Professor Karlo.
Magandang araw sa lahat. Taong 2014, nang unang inimungkahi ang pagkakaroon ng isang GE subject na nakatuon sa mga malagim na panahon ng batas militar sa Pilipinas mula sa lente ng wika, panitikan at kultura. Ngunit nagkaroon ng tulak ang mga pagsisikap na ma-institutionalize ito noong 2018. No, dahil sa backlash, no, sa issue ng public event ni UP President Danilo Concepcion, no, at Senator Amy Marcos. No, so fast forward, and no, ipinasa ng UP Diliman University Council ang PS21 no, noong September 2018. No, at unang itinuro subject noong January 2020. Alam natin no, na mainit na paksa ang batas militar no, dito sa Pilipinas. No, sa isang banda, marami ang patuloy na humihingi ng hustisya. No? Sa kabilang banda naman, mukhang bibig no, ng kasalukuyang gobyerno ang pagbibigay puri no, sa diktadura. No? Halimbawa dyan, no, yung slides, yung video ng Philippine News Agency. May 1.5 billion views pa nga yan no, sa Facebook. Hindi pa tinuturo yung PS21 na red tag na to dahil nga recruitment daw sa mga komunista. Yan yung PowerPoint na iniikot ng militar no, sa mga paaralan. Naging target din ng mga propagandists no, ng government, no, yung Tiglaw, no, yan sa column niya. No, and itong konteksto nito, ito yung ginagawa kong starting point no, sa pagtuturo ng subject. Kasi makikita dito na kung paano yung patuloy na pamana ng pagsisikil ng kaisipan no may epekto no maging sa mismo pagtatangka no na ituro yung martial law no so dito pa lang ipatatak na natin no yung pagkakaroon ng dominante no at mga alternatibong perspektiba no tungkol sa batas militar no so yung balangkas sinisimulan ko diyan no papakilala ng mga historical na konsepto, paglalatag ng historical na konteksto, kung bakit iniklara yun. Sa ikalawang bahagi, tinatalakay na yung mismo struktura ng dominasyon. No, dito may malay na pagdudugtong ng historical, ekonomiko at politikang kaligiran no, sa aspektong kultural. No, na pareho din no, sa ikatlong bahagi na mas nakatuon sa mga kilusan no, at mga anyo ng pakikibaka, no, dito nilugar ko rin, no, kung ano ba yung mga anyo ng sining, no, at politikan, no, yung teatrong bayan, no, mga tula at awit ng protesta, yung social realism, no, sa visual art, no, na lumundo nga, no, sa paglabang anti-diktadura. Yung bahagi nakatuon naman, no, sa mga bakas ng batas militar post-EDSA time, no, hanggang sa present, no, lalo na ang usapin, no, ng historical revisionism at ito nga ang pagpapanumbalik, no, ng pasismo sa kasalukuyan. No, ang pagkakaroon ng DFPP ng mga veterano, no, ng anti-diktadura at pakibaka at mga kabataang guro na nakatuon ng pananaliksik sa plan ito, isa siyang bintahe, no, dahil na-maximize, no, para sa pagtuturo sa PS21, no. And kaya din, no, kung ano yung binibigyan ng diin, no, sa pagtuturo, umaayon din, no, sa kanilang specialization, no, sa palimbawa. No, si Sir Roel Aguila, no, nakapagtatalakay siya, no, ng produksyong pampatantikan, no, laban sa diktadura with first-hand experience, no, pareho rin nagagawa, no, ni Ma'am Nak, no, Kimuell-Gabriel, no, sa usapin ng kilusang kababaihan, no, at kilusang paggawa. Ngayon, alam natin na it was January 2020, unang tinuro yung PS21, but that was the same semester, no, na pumasok yung pandemic. No? So, yung siguro yung pinakamalaking pagbabago dito, yung pagkakaroon ng mga course pack. No? Tingin ko malaking tulong, no, yung pagkakaroon ng mga digitized sa mga materials, no, tungkol sa panahon ngayon, halimbawa, yung mga lumang periodiko, yan yun, example yan, no, na nasa Philippine Radical Papers Collection, no, ng UP Library, gaya ng tuon, no, sa Balangkas, no, nagdedepende din sa nag-handle, no, kung paano ano yan ginagawa, no, yung assessment tools, no, at yung classroom management, no. Sa kaso ko siguro mas naging maparaan, no, sa paggamit ng mga app na tinatangkilik din ng mga estudyante, meter, yung mga pa-online quiz, etc. Malaking tulong din na nasa internet din, no, yung mga news footage, no, mula sa panahon ng batas militar, no, makikita sa Associated Press archive. Mahalagang rekurso din, no, yung mga material na nasa website na ginawa ng OICA para sa commemoration ng 50th anniversary ng Diyon ng Union. Access ito sa encuentro.upd.edu.ph. Wala rin pa yung iba pang mga online na rekurso, no, tulad ng website ng tayo ng mga bayani, hindi nga mapupuntahan dahil sa pandemya, no, bilang pangwakas, no, habang pinapakitid nga ng kasalukuyang administrasyon, no, yung mga demokratikong espasyo sa bansa. Sa tingin ko mahalaga, no, itong PS21 bilang daluyan ng pagmumulat sa bagong henerasyon ng kabataan, no, sa kahalagahan ng karapatang pantao, justisyang panlipunan, no, at paglaban para sa tunay na kalayaan. So, yung pinakahamon nito, paano ma-promote, no, yung subject para mas marami pa yung matutuwa. Habang gumugulo ngayon yung mga pagsisikap para maituro na rin ang PS21 sa iba pang campus ng UP. Hangad ko rin, no, na itong mga parehong pagsisikap ay maitutulak din, no, sa iba pang paaralan, no, sa labas ng UP system. No, parang ubos na yung panahon, no, siguro dito na lang. Maraming salamat, no, sa pakikinig.
Maraming salamat, Karlo. Kung mamarapatin niyo, tawagin ko na lang una kayo sa first name basis para madulas ang ating kwentuhan. Nakaka-relate ako kay Karlo kasi nagtuturo din ako ng PS21 at real talaga yung chilling effect ng red tagging, di ba? Kasi nagtuturo ka ngayon ng parang kinakabahan ka. Any moment, baka bigla kang katukin, ano? At maidagdag ko lang din na ito rin ang ginintoang panahon pampanitikan, ano? Sa panahon ng, sa ilalim ng diktadurang Marcos. Napakaraming literary products, pelikula, kwento, na nobela na nalikha sa mga panahon na ito, ang taas ng energy level. At ibibigay naman ngayon ni Ma'am Rose Arong ang konteksto ng UP Cebu sa pagtuturo ng PS21. Ma'am Rose?
Thank you, Ma'am Nak, and thank you, Karlo, for your presentation. I don't think I need to present anything anymore because that was such a good presentation. But kidding aside, I think one of the hallmarks of martial law is the loss of humanity in the service of one man under the guise of the new society narrative as the key to Philippine progress, which for people constantly yearning for a narrative of prosperity, or at least the prospect of one. This was or is quite tempting. So this GEPS 21, I think, hopes to trace that loss and create a sort of map to this fissure in our nation's story. And so in order to do this, as explained by Karlo, PS21 is anchored on 4 objectives, which divides the course into 4 units. So I'm not going to go into detail about that anymore. So I'm going to focus on what I did for teaching it in UP Cebu. So in terms of preparation for the course packs, I divided into required text. So this would be composed of readings and videos. I curated from the list the liman provided in the syllabus, in the original syllabus. But I also have recommended texts. So these are texts that if students have time, then they can read it. And then there's also another list for more readings. If students have more time and they want to read it, then they can do so. So for the required text, I prepared reading guides just so the students can focus directly based on the key goals of every unit. That was one of the feedback I got from my previous GE course in the first SEM that they preferred having reading guides. So in terms of the choice of materials, because the PS21 reading list is really quite extensive. I had trouble myself reading everything. I mean, I did not get to read everything. So what I focus on is my idea that the study of PS21 is really as much about the past as it is about the present and the future of the Philippines. And so based on popular incidents or events in 2020, I focused my reading list on that. So I had focused on the concept of the politics and economics of natural disasters. So I looked at it for readings based during the martial law period. And I also wanted to focus because it's in UP Cebu, and I wanted my students mainly come from the Visayas region and also from Mindanao. So I wanted them to feel the course to feel inclusive. So I looked for readings because it's very minimal to find readings written or published from our region. I did not have time to look for those materials. So I looked for writing from the center about the marginalized South and the North. So I thought that this way students would be able to sort of see themselves in the readings and not just see it as a very Manila-centric event, which is some of the myths that are being made about martial law. And so when I went to Unit 3 specifically with the literary readings, I focused on concepts of epidemic. So I looked for a short story that had the notion of an epidemic. And another one was about complicity or the banality of evil. And finally about migration. So I hope that these quite contemporary concepts would allow the students also to imagine that while it is a course about the past, our nation's past, it is quite resonant in the now and possibly, hopefully not, in the future. So in terms of assessment tools, I divided into 2 things. So I had low stakes tools and also high stakes tools. So for the low stakes, I have what we call the critical reflection journal. Traditionally, pre-pandemic, it would be a written 300 to 500 word entry after every unit. Because some students have an aversion to writing, I gave the option of the audio. So I prepared a how-to guide to create a quick podcast if they preferred that. And for the high stakes tool, I had 2 requirements. So an individual one, it can either be critical or creative, and a group project. So the group project is based on another teaching strategy I use even before the pandemic, which is what I call the tutorial group system. So students are organized into groups, and these tutorial groups are basically their reading groups. So the entire SEM, they will be meeting each other to discuss their reading so that when they come to the classroom, in the traditional classroom, they would be less shy about their insights just because they've already had somebody to talk about it. In the remote setting, they were encouraged to use something like Google Docs or annotated PDF tools just so they can constantly talk about the readings that were assigned. In terms of classroom management, I had an optional group consultation because the course was designed to be 100% asynchronous. So after each unit and after each marking, submission and marking of their critical reflection journals, I would prepare an audio review just based on what I think were missing from their insights, and also just to fix probably incorrect assumptions based on what I read. And if I noticed that the students were understanding the readings, then I would opt out of the audio, but I will still prepare post-unit notes, still based on their insight. In terms of opportunities and challenges, for me, really what was very challenging was that when we first got approved to adopt PS1, we were quite excited. We had plans to have API planning for preparation of a more regional specific reading list. But of course, thanks to the pandemic, that didn't happen. So I've had to grapple looking for the materials myself. And our library isn't exactly the best resource. If they did have old reading materials I would be looking for, they would be typhoon damage. So I've had to make do with what I have personally or what I could find and procure quickly. And I've had to read that and scan them for my students. And another thing that was very challenging for me is the student access. Half of my class don't have gadgets, and they also don't have easy access to the internet. In fact, half are still unaccountable. I don't know where they are. But those who have contacted me after the midterm have also very difficult circumstances, and I can't blame them. So that's about it for how I've tried to teach PS21 for our UP Cebu students. Thank you for your time.
Maraming salamat, Ma'am Rose, Arong. Oo nga, may isa akong nakaka-relate ako dun sa sinabi mo kanina. Parang from being a teacher, parang naging curator din tayo, di ba? Nagko-curate tayo ng mga materials. Ngayon, malaking time dinidevote natin sa paghahanap ng mga resource materials na pwedeng gamitin sa subject natin at ng mga estudyante natin. And secondly, yung localization. Tama yung sinabi mo kanina, may particular context ang SALT sa ilalim ng batas militar, and kailangan natin i-integrate iyon dun sa original na syllabus ng PS21. Yan. Maraming salamat po. Bago matapos ang sesyon, hinihikayat ko kayong sagutan ng evaluation form. Ang link ay ipopost sa chat box, at pagkatapos pong magbahagi ng lahat ay hinihikayat ko kayong sumali sa pag-uusap para masaya. Maari tayong magtanong at mag-share din ng sarili nating karanasan, insight at magmungkahi. I-maximize natin ang pag-uusap na to para may matutunan po tayo sa bawat isa. So ngayon naman ay tatawagin natin si Associate Professor Hernando.
Magandang araw po sa inyong lahat. Ako po si Hernando at narito po ako upang iharap ang PANPIL 19 o ang Sexualidad, Kasarian at Panitikan. Ibabahagi ko po sa umagang ito ang mga kalagayan at hamon nito sa panahon ng pandemya. Ang kursong PANPIL 19 po ay isa sa mga orihinal na kursong nakasaad sa ilalim ng Revised General Education Program ng UP System. At matapos ang halos 2 dekada, sumalain po ito sa rekonfigurasyon taong 2018 at naaprubahan din sa parehong taon. Ang pangkalatang kurso ay ginagabayan ng layon na malinang ang kamalayang malay sa kasarian sa pamamagitan ng interaksyon ng panitikan ng Pilipinas at sexualidad at kasarian. Halos wala naman na bago sa balangkas nito sa ilalim ng online remote learning, sa ilalim ng pandemya. No? Siyempre, bago talakayan yung mga batayang konsepto ng panitikan, sexualidad at kasarian, ay binabahagi muna yung kabuluhan nito bilang kursong GE sa UP System at bilang natatanging kurso din sa buong bansa. No? At pagkatapos talakayin yung representasyon, panitikan, sexualidad at kasarian, na doon papasok na yung kasarian at sexualidad sa kasaysayan. mula dun sa sinaunang pamayanan, kasarian at sexualidad sa panahon ng bayan, sa panahon ng bansa, at sa panahon ng kapangyarihang bayan. Sa ikatlong bahagi, iba't ibang diskurso at perspektiba hinggil sa sexualidad at kasarian sa mga anyong pampanitikan. So tatalakayin dito yung iba't ibang depiksyon sa panitikan ng moralidad sa pamamagitan ng mga produksyong pampanitikan sa mga institusyong panlipunan. Gayon din yung usapin ng migrasyon, pandemya, digmaan, epidemya, no? Kapag tinalakay na rin yung pagsipat sa mga akdang pampanitikan na tumutuon sa mga penomenong panlipunan. At panghuli rin ay yung pagdalumat sa mga produksyong pampanitikan na tumutukoy sa salimuot at tagumpay ng mga kilusang pangkasarian. Hinggil sa estratehiya ng pagtuturo, lagit-laging may pagdidiin at pagtatampok doon sa pingkian ng teksto at konteksto. Pang-objetibong makita ng mga mag-aaral, no? Yung kabuluhan ng produksyong pampanitikan at ng objetibong realidad, iniuugnay ito at laging lapit o lapat doon sa kanilang mga praktikal na danas. Sa panahon ng pandemya, isa sa pinaka-pinaghandaan talaga ay yung mga magiging inobasyon na gagawin sa kurso, no? At syempre, para simulan niyan, talagang nagbalik tanaw ang departamento at yung mga guro doon sa pagpapakahulugan na itinatakda ng universidad sa online remote learning, kung ano yung mga limitasyon at mga hanggahan nito. At pinapangahalawahan nung mahabang paghahanda din doon sa mga course pack, kasama na yung pagtitipon at pagsisinop ng mga material at babasahin na ibabahagi sa mga estudyante. At panghuli din ay yung magiging daloy ng konsultasyon sa antas ng guro at ng mga mag-aaral. Mayroong mga isinaad sa course pack na magiging batayan ng pagtatasa ng guro. At ito yung ulat, ito yung mga refleksyong papel, panggit ng pagsusulit at panghuling papel o yung pinal na papel. Ito yung ideal, no? Na inaasahan natin sa mga estudyante. Pero dahil mayroong mga naging aberya at limitasyon yung unang semestre ng pagtatakda ng online remote learning, talagang nagtakda na lamang ng minimum o nabawasan talaga yung bilang ng mga inasahan sa estudyante mula doon sa, diba, yung ulat, sa halip na 2 akda, 1 akda na lamang, yung refleksyong papel mula 5 ay 3 na lamang, panggit ng pagsusulit at yung pinal na papel. Sa unang bahagi pa lamang ng semestre ay pinagkasunduan na sa klase yung magiging alituntunin, no, ng ORL para malinaw sa estudyante at sa akin din kung ano yung mga inaasahan, no, sa antas ng guro at sa antas ng mag-aaral. Sa parehong sinkrono at asinkronong sesyon ay minaksimisa yung mga learning management systems na provide ng universidad, ang Zoom, ang Uvle at maging ang Gmail. Lagi ring may sistema ng balik-aral sa bawat pasimula ng bawat lektura sa mga sinkronong sesyon at may regular na kumustahan na pinatutupad sa buong semestre. Isa doon sa kapag mapagmalaki talaga sa PANPIL 19 ay yung handog nitong interdisiplinaridad sa mga mag-aaral. Hindi ka lamang nag-aaral ng panitikan, kasarian at sexualidad, nag-aaral ka rin ng kasaysayan at mga tunggaliang panlipunan. Yung mga estudyante nagkakaroon ng pagkakataon para makagawa ng komparatibong suri sa kalayaan at kalagayan halimbawa ng kababaihan sa panahong prekolonyal tungo sa kapangyarihang bayan, gayon din na ipaunawa sa kanila sa pamamagitan ng iba't ibang kultural na produksyon o produksyong pampanitikan, yung paraan ng pag-ukit ng kababaihan sa kanilang politikal na tungkulin dulot ng agresyon ng imperialista. Gayon din may mga pagkakataon upang maipaunawa sa kanila yung pagtawid ng iba pang sining, paunawa yung iba't ibang forma ng pakikibaka, halimbawa sa Nana Rosa, yung pakikibaka ng Comfort Women, yung dance protest, halimbawa yung 1 Billion Rising, anong ibig sabihin nito. Tapos may iba pang malikhaing paraan katulad ng mga webinar upang maipaunawa yung mga iba't ibang uri ng sexual harassment at mga batas kaugnay nito. So napakarami mga larangan at pamamaraan na maaaring i-explore sa kursong ito. Ilan doon sa mga kinaharap na hamon ng nakaraang semestre ay nilagom sa 3 bahagi. Ilan dito ay nararanasan, kinakaharap pa rin sa kasalukuyan. Halimbawa, yung usaping pang-ekonomiya, may mga estudyante na nawalan ng trabaho ng kanilang mga magulang kaya kinailangan humanap ng paraan upang masustainin yung pag-aaral. Usaping logistical, syempre ito naman ay nagkaroon syempre ng limitasyon doon sa pagtungo sa ilang ilang mga lugar o yung pagbahagi ng mga practical na karanasan sa mga estudyante, halimbawa pagkakaloob ng mga personal na panayam sa kanila, panonood ng mga piling material at pagtungo sa mga institusyon. Gayon din yung usaping pisikal o psikolohikal. May mga papatinding alalahanin yung mga estudyante mula sa iba't ibang sanhi, kalusugan, pamilya, pinansyal, at even yung cyberbullying. Partikular na ibinahagi ito ng mga estudyante kabilang sa LGBTQIA community. Tapos yung kawalan ng konkreto at matatag na suporta. Tapos inilagay din dito, syempre, yung ilan sa mga panawagan ng kilusang estudyante para tugunan yung mga pangangailangan at kahingian ng mga estudyante sa kasalukuyan sa ilalim ng ORL. Hindi rin maitatanggi yung epekto ng quarantine, ng krisis at ng iba't ibang kalamidad sa mga estudyante. Naging mas malinaw, syempre, yung konteksto sa panawagan ng NSEM Now at Academic is Now. Kapag titingnan natin yung mga pangyayari sa dulo ng unang semestre ng nakaraang taon, no? Magkakasunod mula Oktubre hanggang Nobyembre yung malalaking paghagupit ng mga bagyo, no? At may mga estudyante akong nawalan talaga ng lahat ng gamit sa bahay, nawalan ng mga mahal sa buhay at kahit ano pang material para sa kanyang pag-aaral ay nawala na. Kaya ang hirap bumangon. Kaya kinailangan isipin at i-recalibrate din yung mga kahingian sa dulo ng semestre dahil sa mga ganung partikular na kaso. Napakahalaga ng pagtitiyak sa mga mag-aaral na meron silang matatag na suporta sa kanilang mga kurso. Sa PANPIL 19, sa dulong bahagi ng unang semestre, in-adjust lahat ng mga deadlines. Niluwagan ito at sinet na lamang din sa minimum yung mga kahingian. Pero tiniyak ang patuloy na pagpapadala ng mga lektura at mga material o babasahin na kanilang kinakailangan upang makaagapay doon sa kanilang mga hindi nadaluhan ng mga synchronong sesyon. At panghuli ay tiniyak yung regular pa rin na kumustahan kahit tapos na yung mga synchronong sesyon upang maipadama sa mga estudyante na sa kabila ng pinagdaanan natin na karahasan, no? Paninikil sa kalayaang akademiko, krisis dulot ng pandemya, ay mayroon tayong maaaring panghawakan at maging inspirasyon tungo sa ating patuloy na pagsulong. Yun lamang po at maraming salamat.
Maraming salamat, Pau. Napakasarap ituro ng PANPIL 19. Nagturo din ako niyan sa panahong hindi pandemya, di ba? Hindi ko lang ma-imagine paano paano ang klase sa panahon ng Zooming, kasi noon yung nag-share din kaagad sila, 'di ba, ng personal experience nila once makarelate sila dun sa paksa. Dito sa bagong setup, medyo impersonal, 'di ba? So mamaya siguro ay balikan mo yung punto na yon, pero napakarami ring ibinahaging point ni Pau sa atin sa kanyang mga pamamaraan ng pagtuturo na makikita rin dun sa nakaraang dalawang tagapagsalita. Pero papasok dito yung tinatawag na academic ease. Kasi naalala ko dyan, nagre-require ako ng mid-sem assessment lagi sa klase ko. At sabi nung isang estudyante, hindi lahat ng profesor ay mahabagin pagdating sa mga rekisito at accessibility sa mga resources. Kaya sana raw ay mapag-usapan din dito sa GE Conference ang academic ease. Yan, maraming salamat sa first set ng ating speaker. Natatanaw ko na nandiyan ang aking katuwang na moderator sa umagang to, si Dr. Grace Concepcion. For the second set of speakers, we have Grace M. Saqueton. Request ko po ang second set ng speakers. Paki-on po ang inyong video. Grace Saqueton is an assistant professor and is part of the English language program at the Department of English and Comparative Literature, College of Arts and Letters, UP Diliman. Her research interests include world Englishes and equal Englishes, critical discourse analysis, and social linguistics. Pagkatapos po, si Charles Eris Piladja ng speech 30. Si Charles Eris Piladja ay katuwang na propesor ng komunikasyong pasalita at retorika sa Departamento ng Komunikasyong Pasalita at Sining Panteatro, Kolehiyo ng Arte at Literatura, Universidad ng Pilipinas sa Diliman. Nagtapos siya ng Batsilyer ng Arte sa Komunikasyong Pasalita at Masterado sa Pampublikong Pamamahala sa parehong universidad. Aktibo siya sa pananaliksik at gawaing panserbisyo sa mga larangan ng pampublikong komunikasyon, retorika at politika, komunikasyon at kasarian, at mga aralin sa kilusang panlipunan. At pang-anim po at panghuling tagapagsalita sa umagang to ay si Raymond Aquino Macapagal. Raymond Aquino Macapagal is from the Center for International Studies, UP Diliman. He has a Bachelor of Arts in Psychology from UP Diliman and 2 master degrees from Italian universities. His first is a Master in Food Culture and Communication from the University of Gastronomic Sciences, Polenzo. His second is a Master in World Heritage from the University of Turin. Aside from teaching gastronomy and food studies, he also works to develop community-based tourism in the Batad Rice Terraces, Banawe, Ifugao. Wow. So, para sa ating unang tagapagsalita sa second set, tawagin ko po ang presentation ni Grace. Grace.
Good morning, everyone. My short talk attempts to do the following. First, describe English 13 for those who may not be familiar with the course. Second, describe how our department shifted to the online platform. And last, share the practices that worked and didn't work for us. So English 13 is a relatively new course instituted in 2018 to avoid duplicating the coverage of English courses in grades 11 and 12. This was because of the institution of the K-12 program. As a GE course, it puts emphasis on criticality, creativity, and collaboration. And it broadens not only the scholarship of the students, but their sense of identity, both in the personal and collective aspects. English 13 originally was comprised of 2 main parts, each with 3 subtopics. In the first part, the students are introduced to the idea of discourse communities and how each discourse community has its own set of goals and conventions. The discussion then proceeds to locating academic writing as a discourse community. Here, we highlight the conventions of academic writing, including the ethics and mechanics of scholarship. The second part, the writing part, is divided into 3 components. Inquiry, where the students are asked to explore and problematize different concepts in varying contexts. We do this through different sets of readings. Analysis, where the students generate writing to examine, scrutinize, and analyze assertions made on a concept, a social issue, trends, etc. Collaboration, where the students exchange knowledge through workshops, group activities, invitation of guest lecturers, and colloquia. So when the pandemic happened, our department's initial response was to conduct informal workshops in order to brainstorm, share research on effective online teaching, and to commiserate with one another. Dr. Ick also encouraged us to enroll in a free edX class called Pivoting Online Learning. And there we learned that we really have to redesign our courses for the new mode of teaching. Our old syllabus cannot just be adapted and migrated into the new platform. Our main considerations were efficiency, accessibility, equality, flexibility for students and teachers, and of course, care and concern. Because of these factors, majority of us decided to use the asynchronous mode of teaching as the primary mode. For us, the team assigned to revise the syllabus of English 13, what we did was to go back to the course objectives. Okay, so in order to make sure that all objectives are met, even if we collapse some of the topics. Okay, so we decided to go with 4 short modules. Okay, and to cut the number of readings for modules 3 and 4. Okay, so in a face-to-face class, each module has 3 readings. Okay. So for the revised syllabus for online learning, we only have 1 per module, so that would be 2 readings for both inquiry and analysis. We also decided to remove the collaboration part, since the activities that we designed, the online activities that we designed, are already collaborative in nature. We ask them to comment on each other's posts on Google Classroom. We share videos, links, and they themselves can share links. So we thought that we don't need the collaborative, the module on collaboration anymore. Okay. Last week, we again had an informal workshop in order to assess what worked for us and what didn't work and what we could do moving forward, right? And here are some of the things that we noted. Right? What I'm going to do is I'd like to share what worked best for me, right? So aside from detailed course packs, I found out that very clear rubric and conversational guidelines, okay, are my new best friends. Okay, so the challenge for me before was how to communicate the instructions clearly. It was difficult because I have to anticipate possible questions from students, or I was also hesitant that maybe my instructions were not clear. Okay? And how do I make sure that I could convey, okay, what I wanted to the students. Okay? So I thought of signposts, okay, to bring them back to a previous activity or a previous reading in order to activate what they already know. So for example, this is what I want you to do for the introduction. I want you to imagine this as your first paper in the original requirement. So in the original course guide, I have there a very detailed instruction for the first paper, but since I had to collapse the 2 papers into 1, so I'm bringing them back to what they're supposed to do, right? So background of the study, this is what I'm looking for, and this is just similar to the activity that you had in your diagnostic essay. Right? So one of the main problems students is how to come up with their analysis. Okay? And so I have there in the example what I want from them, what I want them to do in the analysis, or what I'm looking for. Right. So in a way, also this would tell them, okay, I will be graded based on these things, right? And then there's a note there. I had to keep on repeating how academic writing does not equate to pretentious language, because these are freshman students and they may have the impression that academic writing is the language of academic writing is those highfalutin big words and so on, right? So yeah, for me, that's the most effective tool in my classroom. Okay, so that's all. Thank you for listening.
Maraming salamat, Professor Grace.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Charles Ladia, and for my baon this morning, I will share with you the learning experiences of the UP Department of Speech Communication and Theater Arts and recalibrating and teaching Speech 30 or Public Speaking and Persuasion in the new normal. So Speech 30 was first offered in 2018 in lieu of Com 3, which is now being taught in senior high school. So Speech 30 focuses on public speaking and persuasion, and we teach students not just to create and craft public speeches.
Pause muna natin. Meron po tayong technical problem. So, i-address muna natin yung technical problem para makita natin ang presentation ni Professor Charles. Okay, habang hinihintay natin, yung may na-generate na question sa akin nung nabasa ko yung discourse communities. Pareho kaya yon dun sa tinatawag nating speech community and dun sa paglipat sa bagong platform, ineliminate ng English 13 yung collaborative module. Ito kaya yung group work. Pero mamaya pa yung open forum natin. Yun lang yung mga napagmuni-munihan ko habang pinapakinggan ko si Professor Grace. And so, pwede na ba? Ready na ba yung yung presentation ni Charles? Para sa speech 30.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Charles Ladia, and for my baon this morning, I will share with you the learning experiences of the UP Department of Speech Communication and Theater Arts and recalibrating and teaching Speech 30 or Public Speaking and Persuasion in the new normal. So Speech 30 was first offered in 2018 in lieu of Com3, which is now being taught in senior high school. So Speech 30 focuses on public speaking and persuasion, and we teach students not just to create and craft public speeches, but also to apply rhetorical theories in analyzing and criticizing other rhetorical artifacts and means of persuasion. And in terms of public speaking as a part of GE philosophy, we focus on it being a liberal art, an agency of transformation, and also a rhetorical act aiming to influence and persuade other people. We underline the values of pagiging makatao at makabayan in our classes, and we believe in transformative education as well, that we can use these theories and persuasion and public speaking to enable students to change themselves, their worldview, and the world. Pre-pandemic Speech 30 classes are always interactive. There is always a community of learner being developed inside the classroom, and it is really anchored on face-to-face interaction. So there were a lot of challenges that we faced when we transitioned to remote learning, like students' resources, of course, teamwork and collaboration. How are you going to build an online community of learners without actually seeing your students and them seeing their peers? And finally, do we still require taped public speeches because speech is a live performance? So with all of these challenges, Assistant Professor Marvin Olaes in one of our conversations said that one of the biggest opportunities that this transition to remote learning gives us as faculty members would be to recalibrate, to reuse, and to upcycle what we already had pre-pandemic. So our mindset and these opportunities would be to recalibrate and redesign what we already have. So first opportunity, and I think this is the biggest opportunity, is there was a bigger call to collaborate amongst the faculty members on modules. So Speech 30 has 8 modules, and every module there will be a faculty member, one senior faculty member, and one junior faculty member, which is also mentorship in terms of creating these learning modules. And then in the future, there is also a possibility of turning these modules into a book or a learning material for all students and even for the public. Second would be we explored a lot of mediated public speeches. We expanded the ground of Speech 30, public speaking and persuasion, to other online modes of persuasion like social media, vlogs, content creators, advertisements, and we have already included a lot of discussion on online pedagogies and digital communication like trolling, disinformation, and fake news, which are relevant to talk about in our situation right now. We also structured our classes. We really made sure that the structure is there for asynchronous and synchronous classes, balancing all of these together. Student-led learning is very important as an opportunity for this. We do evaluation every semester. We survey our students what are the pedagogies or what are the learning materials that work and what are the learning materials that need improvement. And finally, and admittedly, there are more resources online in terms of public speaking and persuasion. So because of all of these opportunities, there were also a lot of innovations that our faculty members shared with our students. First would be the use of apps and online platforms that engage students. And one of the things that we have to remember here is learning involves creating an online community of learners. So as much as possible, we would like for our students to meet each other and collaborate with one another. Sir Marvin Olaes uses his TikTok account to say or to share 30 seconds to 1 minute clip of different learnings on speech communication and public speaking as well. I also created a podcast called Speaking of, and we talk about experiences of people in public speaking and being a lifestyle writer so that it can also inspire and help other people in terms of all of these communication situations. There were also a lot of innovations in terms of classrooms, submissions, and other forms of collaboration inside the online learning classroom. I will give you some examples like Oble. This is a learning classroom management, also Google Classroom. And then for those people who want to embed and have a website for their classes, you can embed videos, you can capture your videos and embed your lecture in Google Sites as well. One of the things that is challenging for us would be consultation, right? And Calendly offer consultations period, so you can just input your free time as a faculty member and students can check your free time and sign up in these consultation periods. Of course, Discord is also very famous with our faculty members. They will just open spaces so that students can come in and consult with their public speeches or with their requirements as well. In creating an online classroom or an online community of learners, there's also Flipgrid, wherein you can post questions to your students and your students can just tape themselves or video themselves and share it on Flipgrid so that they can comment on each other's work, they can see each other's faces, and they can be more familiar with one another, and that can also help them with stage fright. And finally, we explored a lot of different forms of submission like Google Slides instead of just essays and reflection papers. There's also Padlet wherein their portfolio could be uploaded there. Some faculty members require podcasts so that it's the audio that is will be submitted in their classes as well. So to conclude my baon for this morning, let me share with you what Assistant Professor Nico Arguella said, that the journey of teaching in a remote learning setup is a struggle. And our willingness to struggle in this pandemic allows us to be more mindful of how we teach and how important students are in our lives. As in this conversation with Sir Nico was a good indication of how we are all struggling in this pandemic, but we are very committed in serving our students, in making sure that our teaching pedagogy works for them and works for us as well. And as we can see, every day is a learning experience in this remote learning setup. So we continue to improve our teaching pedagogy and our engagement with our learners for right now. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Charles. Natutuwa ako kay Charles kasi pag nag-i-emailan kami, sinabi ko rin to sa'yo, di ba? Ang closing remarks niya lagi ay for a better world. No, totoo naman lagi, binungad niya ngayon na palaging hindi nawawala sa isip nila yung framework ng GE, no? Pagiging makatao, makabayan at transformative education. And talagang marami tayong problems sa panahon ng pandemic, but it also gives us new opportunities to learn, di ba? Kaya yung sinabi mo, magre-calibrate ka talaga, magre-reuse, mag-upskill, nag-increase yung collaboration ng faculty, kasi explore ng mga bagong platform na i-analyze tulad ng mga public speaking materials sa social media. And yung pag-create ng online communication of learners. Yun yung aking takeaway. So tatawagin ko na ang panghuling presentation ngayong umaga, si Professor Raymond Aquino Macapagal.
Salamat, Pagi. Good morning, everyone. Naka-share na po ba yung aking slide?
Hindi pa po. Steph, may slide si Sir Raymond. Ayan.
Ayan, salamat po.
Kita na namin.
So, magandang umaga sa lahat, no? Next slide, please. Southeast Asia 30 is one of the GE offerings of the Center for International Studies. It is an area studies course conceived in the early 2000s by a group of academics from leading universities in Southeast Asia. It aims to introduce the world of Monsoon Asia and its interconnected cultural heritage, belief systems, and cultural expressions brought about by centuries of trade and emporiums. Also drawing upon the Oceanian Wansalwara concept of maritime connectedness, this course endeavors to help students discover more about their Filipino identity as nested within a wider Southeast Asian ethos. This international course has benefited from the academic enrichment brought in by regional exchange programs, visiting academics, artists, cultural workers, and of course, exchange students. Next slide, please. C30 is a multidisciplinary and interdisciplinary course offering a changing panorama of topics in Southeast Asia. Today, C30 is being discussed in the Arts and Humanities panel of the GE Conversations. But since topics also include culture, language, history, and social movements, it is also considered to be under the social sciences and philosophy domain. This course is team taught by various lecturers from different colleges and campuses of the University of the Philippines. Local and foreign academics and artists also come in once in a while when the opportunity arises. Next slide, please. Previously, C30 prided itself in having an experiential approach to learning. Students participated in workshops of traditional dances such as the Indonesian Tari Java or the Igal of the Sama Bajau. They are made to taste fermented condiments such as Malaysian Bulacan, Vietnamese Tuok Mam, Indonesian ketchup manis, or Thai Nam Prek Mengda in order to appreciate what is called linamnam in Filipino or guri in Bahasa. The more adventurous few are made to explore traditional markets or join agricultural rituals in the Ifugao rice terraces. The semester ends with a Southeast Asian food party where students are required to do research on a self-selected, non-Filipino Southeast Asian dish, then prepare, present, and of course eat it with the rest of the class. The typical semester was a jumble of activities, lectures, and festivities. Next slide, please. All that virtually disappeared as the pandemic struck. With online classes, the teaching of movement without physical contact and three-dimensional views was deemed insufficient. Yes, discussions on history and politics may be done with a bit of success in a virtual classroom, but tastes and smells cannot travel even through the fastest 5G or fiber optic connections. As fewer lecturers became available due to their own difficult circumstances, we tried to supplement by requiring online, out-of-classroom learning experiences. Students are made to participate or observe paper presentations or performances about Southeast Asia in general in the relative safety of their own homes. Recently, I have resorted to sending tasting kits to volunteer students who help me run my fermented products lectures by going on cam, tasting and describing the food items to their classmates. Not everyone can try, of course, because I don't have the means to send perishable items to my students in Sultan Kudarat or the Dinagat Islands. We are especially thankful for our office assistants who run the Zoom meetings and Google Classrooms for the technologically inept among us, myself, of course, included. Next slide, please. As we move deeper into the second semester of online teaching, we are also grateful for the handful of eager students who recite and reach out to us across the muted void of the Zoom classroom. We never forget to be extra understanding to those who are a bit behind with submissions. We realize that we, as faculty, also need help and understanding from each other because we are not without our own losses. We are not without our own problems. While we yearn for the resumption of face-to-face classes, we see possible opportunities with this online setup. Having foreign academics hold online lectures may now be more acceptable, saving us a lot of time, money, and other resources. We no longer have to endure the arduous commute to the university, or even to wear shoes and trousers while teaching. But surely, no emoji can capture the twinkle in a student's eyes as they learn something new and exciting in our lectures, told within the four corners of the real-world classroom. Next slide, please. Terima kasih. Maraming salamat. Padayon, UP. Salamat po.
Maraming salamat, Professor Raymond. Na-imagine ko kanina paano yun sa food, ano yung kanya-kanyang food, tas kanya-kanyang tikim and kanya-kanyang pag-share ng ng kanilang karanasan. Mamaya ay yung balikan po ang punto na yan. Ano? Pero yun nga, nagkaroon din tayo ng oportunidad na mag-invite ng mga foreign guests, lecturers, and speakers sa isang oportunidad din yun. Sa puntong ito ay ipapakilala ko naman po ang katuwang kong tagapagpadaloy, si Associate Professor Mary Grace Concepcion mula sa Department of English and Comparative Lit. Siya po ang maghahatid ng mga tanong at babasahin niya lahat ng pumasok na katanungan sa panahon ng registration, pati na po ang mga pumapasok dyan sa ating chat box. So, meron po tayong katuwang ngayong umaga.
So, magandang umaga.
Kanina ay open tayo pati sa sharing ng mga kasama nating dumadalo sa Baon-Bidahan. Okay?
Sige. So, magandang umaga sa ating lahat. So, may katanungan tayo from Professor Melania Flores from UP Diliman. Ano ang napapanahon o makabuluhang kahulugan ng nasyonalismo at kaalaman ngayong pandemya sa ilalim ng diktatura o military junta? Okay.
Bago po kayo sumagot, ay pwede po kaya yung mga panelists natin ay nasa spotlight din dito sa malaking bahagi. Ayan, yung ganyan. Lahat po yung 6 na tagapagsalita, tagapagbahagi ngayong umaga. Si Ma'am Arong, yan. Okay. Grace.
Yes po.
Yan.
Okay. So, ulitin ko yung tanong or may gusto bang sumagot?
Pakiulit mo na lang yung tanong.
Sige po. Okay. So, from Professor Melania Flores of UP Diliman, ano ang napapanahon o makabuluhang kahulugan ng nasyonalismo at kaalaman ngayong pandemya sa ilalim ng diktadura o military junta?
Pwede po ba kaming sumagot? Kaya lang, dahil nga team taught kami, tatawagin ko si Professor Sarah Raimundo para sagutin yung tanong na yon. Sarah?
Okay, Professor Sarah, ito ay tinatawagan na magbahagi.
Okay, sure.
Lahat po ay libreng magbahagi at sumagot. Kasi ito ay si uret-uret.
Magandang...
Kasama po namin siya sa C30, kaya gano'n.
Magandang umaga po sa ating lahat. Maraming salamat po dun sa tanong. Nabanggit na po ni Sir Ray kanina kung paano namin binago or minodify ng county yung aming syllabus sa C30 para matugunan yung mga ganitong issue. So, isa dun sa mga modules na binago ay magkaroon ng module tungkol sa COVID-19 at authoritarianismo. Ikalawa, magkaroon din ng module tungkol sa mga kilusan sa Global South. And I would like to speak briefly to the module that I am currently teaching and a module that I also taught last semester. So una, gusto namin mag-spark ng discussion on how the pandemic has exposed perennial inequalities which exist among nations and the social divisions which exacerbates people's experiences. So basically, what we want to provide is a holistic approach that connects intellectual currents and histories with a global analysis that is keen on the national question, which in turn could only be shaped by class analysis. So for example, in one module in C30, we're teaching locating Southeast Asia in the Global South, focusing on the Bandung Conference and the colonial question for our century. So basically, we undertake this particular module so that we can expand students' knowledge of the histories of struggles in the Global South and emphasize the oft-forgotten truth about revolutions and significant reforms, that these were and are being carried out by people's movements in the Global South. Most of experts or writers that have written on the Bandung Conference describe the Bandung Conference as the first awakening and assertion of the Global South on a world stage. It is the meeting of the despised, the insulted, the hurt, and the dispossessed. And we thought this is really relevant, especially in our experience of COVID-19, the vaccine apartheid, and the monopoly in medical technology. So one of the exercises that we ask our students to undertake is to draw parallels between the erasure of the agrarian question, yung agrario, no, yung agrikultura, in the dominant model of development in the countries in the global south, and the suppression of epidemiological and agricultural research relevant to addressing the global pandemic. And we also want to for them to explore the relationship between the struggle for food sovereignty and a health-centered solution, not only to the pandemic but to diseases in general, no? So basically we just want to break down authoritarianism, what it actually represents, and the potentials and the possibilities that people could explore together kung wala si Duterte. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Sarah. Sir Karlo.
Yes,
Yes.
thank you si Ma'am Lani Flores for asking this question, and then salamat din sa intervention ni Ma'am Sarah Raimundo. Gusto ko na sususugan yung mga nabanggit no ni Ma'am Sarah in relation sa sa kanilang GE course, no? Kasi I think this the question of yung national question goes beyond also yung usapin ng GE, no, but talaga no kung how we view no yung maraming mga bagay lately, no, kasi nga since the 90s, no, early 2000, no, parang when you speak of new colonialism, you speak of imperialism. When you speak of nationalism, no, and parang because of yung discourse ng globalization ay na siya, parang passé na siya, no, kasi nga yung nation na nalulusaw na, no, because of yung the market, no, yung siya na yung dominant, no, and then with yung new information technology, supposedly you have yung convergence, no, ng different mga may dialogue, etc. No? So nagiging obsolete na daw, no, yung triumphalism ng capitalism after the fall of Berlin Wall, no, and then yung no, yung pagiging obsolete na ng nationalist cause. No, but with this pandemic, no, and with the rise of authoritarianism, no, across the world, no, actually ma-trace natin yan, no, yung sa crisis, no, ng capitalism in its current form. No, we had the 2008 na financial na crash, no, and ngayon yung pag-usbong, no, si Trump, no, in the US, you have Bolsonaro in Brazil, you have Modi in India, and you have Duterte, no, dito sa Pilipinas. Nakita natin na yung issues of inequality between nations, no, as Ma'am Sarah explained earlier, no, nandiyan pa rin, no, yung issue ng no, yung the power of the state, no, as a repressive na apparatus, na hindi siya nawala, no, with globalization, etc. So, which is why na sa tingin ko, no, itong PS21, no, it talks about that period of time in the 1960s and the 1970s kung saan ito nga nabanggit kanina ni Ma'am Nak and sa discussion din namin among PS21 teachers, no, na golden age ito ng Philippine literature, no, isa second golden age, no, kasi ang daming novels, daming teatrong bayan, etc. na lumabas dito. At the same time din golden age din ito ng isang golden age ng Philippine studies, no, kasi yung indigenization movement, no, yung trust for regional studies, no, different forms of mga pag-aaral talaga tungkol sa Pilipinas is very strong, no. So I think yung this kind of yung nation sense of nation, no, na the nation not just as the state, no, but you have to learn from the experiences of the masses, no, the workers and the farmers who sila yung bumubuo ng majority ng ng nation, no. I think magandang din, no, in order for the GE and in order for UP to be relevant, no, hindi siya dapat itakwil, no, or discard totally, no, but we had to yung learning from the masses, no, yung at that time yung Philippinization ng media at ng educational system, yung pag-think about yung national industrialization, no, yung science and technology, no, for nation building. Sa tingin ko pwede siyang balikan, no, but ilapat, no, sa kasalukuyang konteksto, especially yung yung science and technology, no, kasi nakikita natin ngayon na yung dependency natin, no, to foreign powers, no, na nahuhuli tayo, no, in terms of itong sa vaccination. So wala tayong intellectual property rights doon, wala tayong capitalization to develop that, no. So I think yung pag-change, no, sa sa framework, no, or mindset ng mga estudyante, ng kabataan, no, pati din tayo din, no. I think no, yung
game changer itong nangyari, no, and I hope na it would spur, no, yung pag-think na ano yan, no, yung ma-rethink itong kahalagahan ng national question. So yun po.
Okay. Thank you. Yung po bang iba nating tagapagsalita ay mabilisan lang kung meron kayong paano sa subject nyo yon, paano nyo i-concretize yung framework ng pagiging makabayan sa inyong subject, sa inyong course. Mabilisan lang. Parang ako siguro pwede ko idagdag din yung yung territorial integrity, no? Because yung problema natin sa West Philippine Sea at saka yung pagtatanggol sa pambansang patrimonyo, yung mga resources natin, my God, magcha-chacha tapos i-open up mo yung yung resources mo sa daigdigan. Okay, si Pau po. Si Prof. Pau.
Opo, dyan sa PANPIL 19, ang pagtalakay dun sa usapin ng makabayan at nasyonalismo, maging nakikita halimbawa dun sa usapin ng kasalukuyang mga sitwasyon. No? So, kung ilalapat siya sa pandemya, pag pinag-uusapan namin halimbawa yung mga karahasan na naranasan ng mga kababaihan o ng kabataan sa panahon ng pandemya, mas madaling natutumbok ng mga estudyante yung pagtanaw doon sa mga sariling karanasan at yung pagdulog doon sa mga kasalukuyang usapin. Bukod doon, syempre sa usapin ng karahasan, no? Yung mga kananayan na pag tinignan natin yung pila ng ayuda, paanong, halimbawa, binubuo yun ng mayorya ng mga kananayan o ng mga kabataan na hindi na nag-aaral tapos nandoon na sa mahabang pilahan ng paghingi ng ayuda. Tapos gayon din yung pagsulpot ng mga bagong termino nga pinag-uusapan, nabanggit niyo na po yung usapin ng teritoryo, usapin ng ayuda, bakit natin pinag-uusapan ito at matunog na matunog ito sa kasalukuyang panahon, paanong sinisikil niyan yung mga, hindi lamang yung katawan natin, hindi limitasyon ng mga katawan natin sa loob ng bahay, kundi yung limitasyon natin pag politika, yung political na tungkulin natin sa bawat araw ay unti-unting nasisikil pagdating ng ganitong panibagong forma ng digmaan na nakapakete sa pangalan ng pandemya. Ayun po.
Charles?
Yes po. Siguro po that's one of our biggest questions this pandemic, no? Sa paano natin ilulugar ang speech communication at public speaking sa pandemyang ito. So isa po sa mga pinakamalaking reflection yan nung aming mga meetings sa department at nakita po namin talaga na even if very traditional ang public speaking as a practice, makikita natin ngayon how different world leaders around the world is using public speaking to actually either pacify or anger the public right now. So makikita natin every week, di ba, ang ating presidente, meron siyang kanyang public speech. So nagiging magandang point of entry yon sa aming mga klase kasi we have to be critical about all of these messages, not just what the president is saying, but also a lot of public speaking instances now in the pandemic. And second, we also have to problematize at na-realize namin ito sa speech na nag-iiba na rin ang composition ng audience natin ngayon. Hindi na sila titigil para makinig ng 15-minute speech or 20-minute speech, di ba? Sa YouTube, 10 minutes lang yan. Sa TikTok nga, 1 minute lang siya. So nakikita natin din yung pag-develop not just of public speaking from the ancient Greek civilization all the way ngayon sa pandemic. At ikalawa, yung pag-develop din ng Gen Z audience natin. How do you relate now to the audience na hindi mo na sila nakikita face-to-face, di ba? Titingin ka lang sa screen ngayon. At paano mo sila i-engage sa screen ngayon. So mas nagiging dapat mas critical ang audience, but also mas nagiging dapat critical tayong mga speakers ngayong panahong ito.
Okay, thank you, Charles. Back to you, Grace.
Okay. Actually, ako may, yes, okay na? May katanungan po ako. How do you deal with students who pagpasok sa klase or nakikita sa mga term papers and outputs na Marcos apologies, Duterte supporters, or sa nagtutur ng PANPIL 19, mga misogynist at homophobe po? Anyone?
Siguro lahat. O baka wala silang
sige, ako na lang siguro muna.
Hello po. Prof. Grace.
Ako na lang po siguro muna kasi sa experience ko sa English 13 ko last SEM, from Ilocos siya. And siya naman, wala pa siyang stand. Pero yung parents niya daw po talaga Marcos loyalists, and parang hindi lang nila pinag-uusapan sa bahay. And kasi since English 13, one of the thrusts of English 13 is actually to equip the students with critical thinking and to make them problematize issues. So I guess we listen to them and we ask them kung parang bakit Marcos apologists yung mga magulang mo? Anong masasabi mo doon? Where are you in that conversation? And kasi hindi naman natin silang pwedeng sabihan na bobo ka, tanga ka, ganito yung mga magulang mo. But I think through the reading materials also that we provide, like we give them, like for example in English 13, may isang module tayo on analysis that has authoritarianism as a theme. So I think through the course of the subject, we hope that they'll be equipped with critical thinking, they can problematize issues, and eventually manggagaling sa kanila na, ay, oo nga, ito pala yun. So parang one of the things also that we put forth in English 13 is for the students to see these various perspectives, to make them aware of the conflicting issues, conflicting conversations, then they can decide on their own. We cannot really impose. So siguro naman matalino sila dahil nasa UP sila. So we trust that they'll make the right and wise decision. Yun lang po.
Okay. Si Ma'am Rose.
I mean, in PS21 is quite embedded how the course talks about also the current authoritarianism of Duterte. But what I found quite striking with the reflection journals of my students was that even though I did not tell them or ask them to reflect on the present, they almost always ended up ranting more about Duterte than they do about Marcos. And then some students, especially the audio submissions, I have to listen to them. So especially the audio submissions, and you could feel that, like the trend, like when there's something that's gone viral because Duterte said something on TV, and you can see that the anger is quite resonant. But there's also this sort of resignation on some students who have parents who are Marcos apologists. And there were some students who actually shared that they're quite happy that we brought PS21 to UP Cebu because before they started learning the course or about martial law, they did not know anything about it besides the usual they see on TV. And so I found that quite striking and also quite sad that they have, and I think there was one student who said, I can't believe I had to wait to be a UP student to know about the truth about martial law. And I think that's just, I mean, why do they have to wait? And so I'm quite glad that we brought PS21 to UP Cebu.
Yeah.
Susunod ko
Karlo?
na lang rin yung nabanggit nila Ma'am Grace, no, at si Ma'am Rose, no, kasi sa experience ko sa so far I've been teaching yung PS21 since last school year. Yung second semester na 2020, yun yung naputol ng pandemic, and then first semester of the school year, and then ito yung ikatatlong semester. But hindi ko lang alam, no, kasi minsan alam ko naman yung mga estudyante ay hindi, pero wala akong na-meet, no, na student so far na sila outrightly nagsasabi na DDS sila o kaya yung pro Marcos sila. Pero yung marami, these are students na yung tito niya daw, yung parents niya, they are Marcos loyalists, no, or they are DDS. Isa sa mga yung driving force kung bakit kinuha nila yung PS21 kasi alam nilang mali yung parents nila, but they're not that equipped, no, to challenge yung ilan sa mga assumptions, no, kasi nga yung sinishare din nila yung elementary, during high school, ipahapyaw lang naman, no, siya, infrastructure man si Marcos, yung mga pinatay naman, okay lang kasi nga mga pasaway, no, so para sa disiplina ay okay lang yon, ganun, etc. So parang feel nila na yung course is one venue kung saan nai-empower sila, no, with knowledge, no, about the past, no, through reading itong mga literary texts at mga historical na mga texts tungkol sa martial law. Yung closest siguro na maalala ko is that sa ibang subject pa, introduction sa panitikan ng Pilipinas, Phil 50, meron ako student doon na DDS siya, no, so parang yun na-justify niya yung nangyayari, and then Siyempre yung mga discussion namin ay iba-iba, no, tungkol sa usapin ng mga magsasaka, usapin ng mga manggagawa, then pagbumulat, etc., reading all of those texts, no. sa ano ko hindi naman siguro may impose no sa mga students no but hopefully no through sa yung na-curate nga na mga materials no it could help them no to see yung other side din no para na on their own pwede nilang mapag-isipan no yung mga bagay-bagay na yung certainty nila na yung side lang nila o yung kung ano yung natutunan nila from their parents or nakita nila from TV or group of friends nila ay maano din no mababalance out din by presenting din yung other na side. So sa tingin ko yun yung pinaka mahalaga din dito din.
Yeah. And if Pao?
Doon sa PANPIL 19, hindi ko pa naman naranasan na magkaroon ng isang misogynist na estudyante. Sa ibang klase, meron, pero ito ay nakahimpil lang doon sa hindi gaanong sensitibo sa paggamit ng salita. No? Mga lalakihan to, tapos inalam ko kung bakit merong ganong tunog talagang macho doon sa kanilang mga reflection papers. So apparently ito ay fragment, no? So ang ginawa na lang na diskarte doon na pinihit ko yung mga babasahin na malapit doon sa mga wika, no? Malapit doon sa pag-historicize natin sa gamit ng wika para mas maintindihan nila yung gamit ng salita at kung bakit ito nagiging wika ng panliliit, no? O wika ng pang-aalipusta, wika ng opresyon. Yun. Tapos doon sa pagiging doon sa Marcos apologies, may mga estudyante, particular sa PI 100 ito, hindi sa PANPIL 19 na apo pa ng Marcos Crony, no? At yung mga magulang niya ngayon, dahil Marcos Crony yung lolo niya ay mayroong mga matataas na posisyon sa gobyerno ngayon. Pero hindi ko na kinailangan pang kumbinsihin siya doon sa magiging tahak ng kanyang buhay sa UP, no? Kasi na siya, woke na raw siya, no? In fact, member na nga siya ng Gabriela Youth, no? At yung pagpasok doon sa kurso at halimbawa pag-enroll doon sa particular na kurso, sa particular na guro ay para i-assure niya yung sarili niya at sugan yung mga desisyon niya noong mga panahon yun, no? Yun. Tapos basta ganun lang pagka mayroong lumalabas ng mga estudyante na yung gamit talaga ng salita at yung turing doon sa mga issue ay mayroong alanganin, no? At kailangan pang kumbinsihin kahit nasa kalagitnaan ng semestre. Pinipihit talaga yung mga babasahin. Babalik tayo, mag-historicize tayo at bibigyan natin siya ng diin para tumimo. Pero hindi mo siya direktang papagalitan at direktang basta text at konteksto pa rin. Yun.
Okay, Charles. Tawagin ko si Charles bago tayo bumalik.
Gaya po ni Ma'am Pauline, syempre po sa public speaking, di ba, it's all about freedom of expression. So hindi po namin masasabihan yung mga estudyante na, hala, yung opinion mo, sa iyo lang yan, hindi namin dapat pag-usapan sa klase. Pero lagi namin binibigyang tuon yung idea na meron tayong theoretical framework sa isang public speech, di ba? Kailangan nating i-dissect ang isang argument. Kasi throughout history, makikita naman talaga natin ang public speech ay wina-weaponize siya ng mga politicians, ng mga presidents para ilarga ang kanilang narrative, para ilarga ang kanilang kasaysayan na gusto nilang maalala ng mga tao. So ganun po kami sa Speech 30, binibigyan namin sila ng theoretical foundation na i-dissect natin yung argument, totoo ba siya, hindi ba siya totoo, ano yung mga rebuttals sa mga arguments na ito, para bago nila ipresenta sa klase, alam na agad nila na may mga arguments na mali at may mga arguments na talagang doon makikita natin na may ebidensya, na merong rational siya sa paggamit ng argument na iyon. So binibigay namin sa estudyante yung ganong yung ganong kalayaan sa pagsabi ng kanilang gustong sabihin sa klase, lalo na doon nga babalik tayo sa idea na public speaking is a liberal art, diba? It frees the mind of people and it depends on you, it depends on the student on which path are you going to take in terms of that liberalization.
Okay. Maraming salamat. Sige, dahil malapit na tayong magtapos, bibigyan daan na lang natin ng isa na lang tanong. Although ang sarap ng discussion natin, ang sarap pang palawigin sana. Pero maganda yung punto, tuturuan mo rin silang mag-analyze. Hindi mo lang ihatid yung information, di ba? Yung importante, marunong silang mag-analyze yung tools of analysis para sila mismo alam nilang makapunta sa pinakatumpak na sagot.
Keep.
For the last question, Grace.
May bagong question dito sa chat and I think related ito sa napag-usapan. Napapag-usapan po ba sa inyong mga klase ang paggamit ng AI sa paghimok sa opinyon ng publiko? From Kelvin Meneses, UPLB.
Yes, could I answer that? Yung
AI is artificial intelligence.
Yung
Okay.
PS21 kasi na syllabus is designed siya, una yung introduction, and then the next part is yung yung dictatorship, and then later on yung mga movements and struggles that arise against the dictatorship. Then yung pinakadulong na part, parang yung pagdudugtong na sa kasalukuyan, yung usapin ng historical revisionism, and then yung pagpapatuloy ng mga bakas ng militarismo, authoritarianism up to the present. So doon sa huling part, doon yun na pag-uusapan. Kasi during sa second part na meron ng modulo na yan, yung paano yung repression of the media, yung censorship, so sa huling part parang mababalikan siya, na ngayon dahil nga may pag-unlad sa teknolohiya, etc., yung the same na na phenomenon ay nagpapatuloy in different ways. So kailangan talaga siya pag-usapan, kasi bahagi siya ng realidad natin sa kasalukuyan. So yun po.
Thank you. Karlo, meron pa po bang gustong mag-offer ng ibang sagot doon? Okay. Sige. Kung wala na po, Grace, wala nang...
Sige, perhaps one last question. From Amy Catalan, UP Visayas, what is the effective way in teaching speech using the remote learning mode? Although I think napag-usapan na yun, I think the most effective way of teaching speech in your karanasan.
Dun po sa aming mga usapan sa department, syempre ang concept natin ngayong pandemic ay essential. So keep what is essential sa speech 30, lalo na hindi naman natin mare-require lahat ng estudyante to tape themselves kasi nga medyo malaki yung data na kailangan doon, 300 MB to 500 MB. So we focus on two things. The first one is focus on the content of the speech. So talagang nag-focus po kami sa speech plan na detail. Very important yun kasi even after the pandemic, magagamit siyang skill ng mga estudyante. And second would be, yung nga pong critiques of public speeches. Very important yun because you cannot be a good public speaker if you don't know how to critique a public speech. Either it's a good one or something that needs improvement. So focus on these two things, content creation and being sensitive to rhetorical artifacts that other people are sending to you. So yun po yung focus na aming speech 30 classes.
Maraming salamat. Maraming salamat, Doc Grace. Maraming salamat sa ating mga panelista. Tayo po ay nasa huling bahagi na ng ating Baon-Bidahan, no? At tatlo lang naman yung papuntong kailangan nating sagutin dito. Paano tayo nagturo at lahat ng tagapagsalita ay nagbahagi ng kanilang karanasan ng maagap na adjustment, no? Recalibration, reusing, upscaling, pagbabagay, pagpakikibagay sa kasalukuyang context ng ating panahon natin. At ang pinakahuli dyan, yung academic easing nga, na kailan talagang kapado mo yung sitwasyon ng iyong estudyante. At saka isasama mo na rin yung sarili mo doon bilang guro para medyo realistic yung mga applications and requirements na gagamitin sa klase. At lahat din ng tagapagsalita ay ipinarinig nila kung ano yung kabuluhan ng mga kursong ito at kung bakit nagkakaroon ng dobleng halaga ang mga courses na ito, especially sa konkretong pangangailangan ng bayan natin sa ilalim ng pandemya, sa ilalim ng lumalakas na tendensyang pasista ng gobyerno, no? Kaya kami rin nagkakaroon ng discussion on right populism, yung mga ganyan. At confident ako sa mga narinig ko ngayon na itong mga professor natin talaga ang unang-unang ano ba ang tawag natin sa atin? Unang-unang sandata sa pagpapalakas ng GE courses natin. So at this point, gusto ko pong tawagin si AVP Banji Amor para i-award ang certificate sa ating mga tagapagsalita. Ma'am Banj.
Yes, Ma'am Nak, thank you very much. So ngayon naman po ay so magandang umaga po sa lahat. Sa puntong ito, gusto natin ipresenta ang ating Certificate of Appreciation sa ating mga panelists. So una, basahin ko lang yung certificate, no? And then isa-isa kung tatawagin yung pangalan. So Certificate of Appreciation is presented to Nancy Kimuell-Gabriel for imparting her invaluable knowledge as a moderator during the Arts and Humanities domain, PS 21, English 13, PANPIL 19, Speech 30, C30, GE Conversations of the UP System GE Conference 2021 with the theme Baon-Bidahan, How Did You Teach GEX in Your CU? Given this 10th day of May 2021, signed Vice President for Academic Affairs, Maria Cynthia Rose Panson Bautista. Thank you, Ma'am Nak. And then kay Ma'am Grace Concepcion naman as Assistant Moderator sa pagtulong naman sa ating Q&A portion. And ang ating panelists, si Sir Karlo Mongaya, Ma'am Rose Arong, Ma'am Pauline Marie Hernando, Ma'am Grace Saqueton, Sir Charles Eris Ladia, at si Sir Raymond Macapagal. So marami pong salamat muli sa inyong pagdalo ngayong first conversation natin ngayong araw. Meron pa po tayong dalawang conversation mamaya. 10:30 para naman po dun sa cluster of G courses natin na nasa Science and Technology domain. At mamayang hapon ng 1:30 para naman dun sa Social Science and Philosophy cluster G courses natin. At nabanggit ni Ma'am Nak nung umpisa na meron tayong mga plenary conversations tomorrow naman. Yun yung part 2 ng system conference natin. Gusto ko rin i-recognize yung ating members ng TWG ng GE implementation na naging punong abala sa pagplano ng system conference na to. So nakita ko sa panel natin, nandito si Ma'am Alisa Alampay, si Ma'am Nak, syempre, ng UP Diliman, Director ng GEC, si Ma'am Nera Catalbas ng UP Visayas, Sir Mo Liangco ng UP LB, si Ma'am Nel Faglova ng UP Mindanao, si Ma'am Pat Arinto as member at large, si Sir Ricardo Bagarinao ng UP-OU, at si Sir Shane Carion ng UP Cebu. Siyempre, gusto rin natin pasalamatan ng ating support mula sa ating secretariat, sina Steph, Kai, at si Rona, ang ating tumutulong ngayon dun sa pag-present ng mga video presentation. At siyempre, nagmo-monitor ng ating Q&A sa Slido, si Rika at saka si Dax. So marami pong salamat muli sa inyong lahat. Ma'am Nak?
Maraming salamat. Inaanyayahan ko po kayong buksan ng inyong video para sa pagkuha ng larawan. Yan. Sino po ma'am ang kukuha ng picture natin?
Si Steph po ma'am.
Yes. Pati po yung mga lahat po ng dumalo.
Okay. Ayan, so we have 3 frames po. Smile lang po tayong lahat. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Last. That's it. Thank you po.
Maraming salamat.
Maraming salamat. Thank you.
Si Tess Payungayong ng Academic Affairs. Hi, BC Tess.
Hello po, Ma'am Tess.
Thank you very much po. Pwede pa sana nating palawigin. Ang sarap-sarap ng kwentuhan. Pero there will always be next time. Bye-bye po sa inyong lahat. Kita-kita ng 10:30 for the next session.
Thank you.